Okay, I'm gonna call this meeting to order at 6:15. All right, first we got a roll call. We have Dave V out there in Zoom land. Then in person we have, sorry.
Joe Hammond,
David Martin.
Kathy Farman, Lauren Fearman, Maria Gambino,
Paula Chelsky.
Julie McKenzie,
Craig Peter.
Jamie Dickey,
Emma Vestola,
Judy Pullinan,
Ann Gardner.
And then Amber over there. All right, motion to approve the agenda. Kelly makes the motion.
second.
Julie seconded.
All right.
Right. Any additions and deletions? All right, hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Next, looking for a motion to approve the minutes of April 12, 2023, regular meeting minutes. Who makes the motion?
Second.
Dave M. seconds.
I have one slight change.
Yep.
Or correction, I guess it is. And under the financial update, on the fourth line, it says something about Mount Holly, schools have met their contract. It should be the Ludlow-Mount Holly district.
What did you say, Cheryl? I didn't hear anything you said.
In the financial section from line, it's on the fourth line, it talks about that we met the contract for the heating oil.
We maxed out, yeah.
Yep, so it says Mount Holly School, and
Oh.
it should be Ludlow Mount Holly.
Okay, gotcha. Got it.
Said what, the fourth line? Yeah, it says, HS should say LH. Okay, thank you.
And I'm not listed as present, but I spoke a lot for somebody who wasn't here.
Okay,
Go figure.
excellent. So we'll add you, Barry. You want to be up there, we'll add you.
I think I might have been online. I think that might have been what I had the thrown.
Yes.
Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, good. Next up here, we got, all right, communications, board comments. It's you.
I would like to thank all our teachers since it's Teacher Appreciation Week and how much we appreciate all their hard work.
Aye. Public comments. All right, beautiful. Administration report, superintendent report, Lauren.
Okay, as we've said before, the last day of school for students will be Friday, June 16th. We talked about at the Ludlow-Mount Holly board meeting last month, a request to have the requirement that teachers come in for a final in-service day on June 20th be waived. Both Ludlow-Mount Holly and Green Mountain have approved that. So I just wanted everybody to know that since both district boards have waived that requirement, we will be allowing them to do their final in-service day over the course of the summer. Some teachers will still come in on June 20th and do some work. Others are going to do a variety of activities. Anne has prepared a form for them to fill out where they'll tell us what they are doing and what the student connected outcome for their work will be, and include some evidence of performance. So thank you for that. Glad to have that in place. Other news, our after-school program director, Kyle Giacomo, is now here in Vermont, in person full-time after being full-time but remote for March and April. His family has moved to Mount Holly. He has the summer program planned. Sign-ups have been underway since mid-April. They're pretty much full for both locations, Ludlow and Chester. But both of those locations serve all of our TRSU families. So we're excited to have him and his family here, and it's wonderful to have things well in hand this early in our seasons. As Judy said, this is Teacher Appreciation Week. The work that our educators do is, I believe, the most important work there is. It's the job that makes all other jobs possible. It is endless hours, constant stress, and occasional bouts of joy and connection that makes everything feel worthwhile. Teachers are the foundations of our school, which makes them the foundations of our society. There was a White House proclamation of Teacher Appreciation Week this year, and in it, our president said, among many other things, the greatness of a nation is measured in part by how it prepares the next generation to succeed. That's what our teachers do. They prepare the next generation. So I appreciate the board thanking our teachers. I want to make sure that all of us are thanking our teachers for making so much possible for all of our students and all of our families. In other news, we have interviews happening in the Green Mountain side of things for principals, for Cavendish, and for Green Mountain. We have an open forum scheduled for the Green Mountain High School principal, which is a subject of interest to some of our Ludlow and Mount Holly families. That will be happening Monday, May 15th at 6 o'clock. It is in person at Green Mountain High School, but also on Zoom. That link is up. And I would encourage people, whether you have students involved directly or not, to attend and see our two candidates. All of their information is up on the TRSU website. The Green Mountain Board is going to be meeting immediately after the open forum in order to interview the two candidates and make a decision. And we'll be inviting people to give us, who are there in person, to give us feedback on paper, and anybody attending on Zoom to fill out a form that the board will then have access to immediately after. So happy to hear from anybody who wants to attend those.
What time is that on?
At 6 o'clock. And we work it the way we worked at the open forum for our Ludlow principal. Both of our finalists will come to Green Mountain. One will, from 6 until about 6:45, be in front of people on Zoom, while the other is in front of the people who are there in person. At 7 o'clock, we swap so that everybody on Zoom gets to see both candidates, everybody in person gets to see both candidates. And then after that is done, at 8 o'clock, the board will conduct hopefully brief interviews, because I've heard everything everybody has had to say over the last 2 hours, and then make a decision. Right, then the last couple of things, I'll be in Burlington next week on May 17th for the Vermont School Board Association School Board Officer and Superintendent Training. I will be there as well. And then I will be staying up there for May 18th and 19th for the Vermont Superintendent Association's annual spring meeting. It's wonderful to have all of those things happening in person again. Also exhausting, and I will be available online, available by phone, but I'll be driving up to Burlington Tuesday night and will not be back again until Saturday morning. So, and Cheryl's out of town at her conferences that week as well. So everybody being aware of that. We have our all board retreat scheduled for July 20th. And I know that some people had indicated that that was a day that they would struggle to be there. I hope that everybody will try to be able to be there. That is not a meeting we do by Zoom. That will be an in-person meeting. We will likely do it back at one of the conference rooms at Jackson Gore, but I haven't finalized the location yet. So as soon as I have that finalized, I'll let everybody know. The VSBA will be providing a facilitator for us. Phil Gore worked for them for 1 year, and there's now another person in that role, and I will have her name to share.
When does that generally start?
We probably will start at 8:30, maybe, but yeah, we're usually starting somewhere around there, and running for roughly 6 hours. Lunch is provided. We provide you with lunch. We usually have coffee in the mornings. And our start time is dependent in part on when the facilitators are available. And if you have other questions about it, let me know. I'll send reminders out about that. And then, as I've reminded people a couple of times, there are webinars available on the Vermont School Board Association website for welcome to your first year journey on your school board. There will be another one available between 5 and 7 on May 15th. So if you're not watching the candidates for Green Mountain High School on that evening, you might want to watch that webinar. And then there is also a webinar that will happen between noon and 1 on May 30th for how to make the most of a summer board retreat. So
I'm sorry, the first one that you were saying, what time is that?
on May 15th between 5 and 7 p.m. And links and registration for that is through the VSBA website. And they're free.
And Lauren, are those recorded that you can watch later on?
Yes, they are. If you
Okay.
sign up for them, they will send you the link, and most of the time, they'll put the links up on the website eventually. And that's what I have for you. Are there other questions?
Okay. Lauren, next principal reports. Greg.
Thank you, Paul. So really busy time of the year going on in both of our schools. As you've heard, we have a new statewide assessment system called TCAP. It's replacing SBAC. So we've been hard at work to that set of assessments the last couple of weeks. And we're just about done. We should finish this week. Then next week, the NWDA MAPS testing begins for reading math and reading fluency. And that's K through 6. BTCAP is 3 through 6. We have a lot of really fun end of the year events and field trips. There's one on this Thursday. Mill River invited us to go see the Shrek musical that their students are putting on. So our grades 1, 2, 3, and 4 will be attending that. We have a really exciting circus residency with Troy Wonderly on the 15th of May. There'll be kind of a culminating performance at 1:35 in the gym. Families are all welcome to attend. Our spring concert is next Thursday, the 18th at 6 o'clock. That's a lot of fun preparing for that. I'm really excited about it. Our 6th graders are going to Kuwait for their end of the year trip the week of May 22nd, so 22nd through the 26th. Bob Woolley and I and Emma are going, as well as a couple of parent chaperone volunteers. We have PTSA Carnival Night, and I want to thank Brittany Wynn for spearheading that. She's chairing that event. That's going to be at 5:30. And a talent show on June 2nd at 6 p.m. And thanks to Selena Bedard for chairing that event. That is also garnering a lot of excitement. Kids are preparing their talents. On Wednesday, June 7th, we have our pre-K and kindergarten registration. And as of today, our enrollments look like they might be going up a little bit. So that's great news. Field day and an all-school cookout on Tuesday, the 13th in the afternoon. And Charity Blanchard is bringing for food truck, which is going to be really cool. So the kids will have kids that get their hot dogs and hamburgers and veggie burgers and salads and all that stuff right off the truck. So that's exciting. And our graduation is Thursday evening, the 15th at 6 p.m. And the graduating class wants to continue the COVID-inspired tradition of the caravan through the town. So for anybody out there, we'll take a left out of the school road and go up to Belmont and over Healdville to 155, back down to 103, all the way down to Harry's and out Shunpike and back around Four Corners to the Blicky Light and back to school. And it's really fun when the whole town stands outside their doors and cheers the caravan on. So we're going fire and rescue will meet the caravan.
Nice.
So a lot going on, but really positive and just fun. Questions?
So last month, we heard about some glitches with the testing. Is it at least physically, I mean, people working?
There's a lot of glitches.
Yeah, okay.
A lot of glitches, yeah. Yeah. There have been some pretty major ones that they've fixed some of them. But, you know, it's our first year, so hopefully that will improve year over year.
There was insufficient testing. There was no field test that happened. There was a limited amount of time. The technical glitches are to be expected the first time through something. My bigger concern is that because we didn't really have a lot of time to see what the test was like or have a whole lot in the way of practice tests, our students didn't get to interact with the format of the test online, which means they are not always familiar with which boxes they have to fill things out or how you connect, or do I have to go to the second page to find the readings? And when students don't get a chance to practice that, you are frequently getting a score that is not about their competence to read, write, or do math. It's about their ability to guess what the test is asking them to do when they haven't had an opportunity to practice the format.
Yeah, and even some of the things like we did get to do some practice, but that some of the features that were allowable in the
Then they
practice
change.
weren't available. So, you know, kids, you know, but it is what it is.
So it's a baseline, it's the first year. Next year, it'll be a little different again, but we'll at least have some more familiarity.
Sounds like a full rollout from the state, you know?
That is what it sounds
Yes,
like, because
yes.
that's what it is.
And I'll say that's what it is. I'll say state, but it's their fault, not ours.
The Superintendent's Association, the
Right.
Principals Association,
Yeah,
the School
teacher.
Board Association, and the Teachers Union all wrote a letter to the state saying just,
But I do also, I want to personally thank all of our teachers and our staff, not just with the testing, but with everything. Just goes so far above and beyond. Cares so much for our kids. It's really pretty special staff.
That's one question, and it can be a very short answer. Is there a way to gather data from your practice testing when you do that?
Yes, in the
Yes, I
sense of like you could learn about what, you know, if you're doing a particular question, you know, what merits a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4. Is that what you mean? Like can kids get a
If
sense
kids
of,
actually take the practice test, do you get feedback about their performance?
that's something.
eventually,
Online, it's on the browser. It's an online, you can Google it and see what the test has been.
Right, but you can't get feedback about the specific kids in your class or in your school to get info about how well they did or what you might need to work on in between the practice and the real.
Right, like the way us back at the interim assessments. Yeah. No, yeah.
and hopefully eventually we'll have that.
It's a great question.
Just too
Asking
handy.
for a friend.
It's just, yeah, just too handy, just too handy. It makes too much sense, that's all.
Generally, those interim tests with feedback become available after the test is, like it did for SBAC. After the test has been in place, most of the bugs have gotten worked out. People are comfortable with it, then the vendor is able to create an interim test that will give you feedback. That's
the way it's
probably
all-
about two
Yeah.
to 3 years old.
Yeah.
Yes, just in time for them to change it again. You know.
Got it.
All right.
You mentioned this test that we're talking about, the new test, but then you also mentioned that there's another upcoming test. Can you briefly distinguish what the two tests measure?
Sure. So NWEA MAPS is what we call it. We test K through 6. Then we do a reading growth test and a math growth test. So it measures student growth and we do it 3 times a year. We benchmark it in the fall, in January, and at the end of the year. We're about to do that. And then we also have a reading fluency test that is also by the same vendor. And that allows us to see reading fluency, so words correct per minute, accuracy, and so on. So the suite of those tools are quite useful. They really give us a lot of data, and we share that data with the kids so they can see their growth. They have some really nice visual reports. There's one called the student profile that I really like that really helps to see the growth, not only from benchmark to benchmark, but year over year. And really gives us a lot of instructional data so we can say, okay, what's the next step in the learning targets for this student? And they are also setting goals themselves about, oh, wow, okay, I see my understanding of literary text is not as strong as my other types of text or vocabulary. So
And the one that just happened that we are just talking about,
the TCAP,
that's just once a year?
that is just one sequence.
Got it.
So, and this is the first time we've done it, so we don't really have longitudinal data.
Got it. Thanks.
Great question.
So we've been reading a lot in the press about how nationwide kids have been suffering, because of COVID.
Yeah.
Can you tell from the 3 times a year test, some sort of general impressions, are is there suffering and bouncing back up, or what are the trends been like?
Yes, I could say definitely generally there was an impact from COVID that was detrimental. And we are starting to see some of the gaps starting to fill, but it's going to be a bit of a long road.
And for the most part, what we saw, and I can speak to it too, but for the most part, what we saw was not that students suddenly dropped further down. They continued to make growth, most of them, but the growth was not the predicted growth that they usually make. So that they're continuing to, even through COVID, read a little bit better, make some performance growth for math, but not at the level that they were making before out of the predicted level.
Yeah, I was just going to add on, a little bit of what Julie's question was too, with the maps, it measures the growth and it also measures how projection of where the student is in relation to the standard of that grade level. So it's the balance between both of those. And so as Lauren just articulated, what you see is like the difference between the growth and where they are in relation to the standard to see how you can, where a student is. I think from a TRSU perspective, at least in our team, Julie and I, we've been really looking at that data in teams to make instructional decisions to support the students, to help teachers support the students.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that's a new practice that's built into our master schedule this year. So pre-K through grade 6, we meet every week for 40 minutes and are constantly looking at this data and having it inform our instruction. So that's a big, I think that will help with the pattern.
Right. But partly I'm wondering, when the more standardized annual test results come out, whether as part of publicizing results of those, you'll want to report on your more regular ones and your experiences and some sort of narrative. But when do those results come? Not for quite a while.
Well,
right?
part of the problem is when they come and then when they're on embargo. Last year's Smarter Balance data was available to us in the fall. It's still embargoed. So, yeah.
Really?
So
And we don't know when.
usually, when they'll lift that. And some of that is around the collection of some data and they're changing the assessment. Usually after the state's required standardized test is done, we usually get data about it at some point over the summer. And usually it becomes unembargoed somewhere at the beginning of the fall.
And I don't want to give the impression that maybe it's really good to think about the data we get from MAPS and BCAP, but we also have a really comprehensive local assessment plan. And so we do unit assessments for our everyday math units. We do that for our EL units as well as performance testing and modules. We have foundations assessments regularly. We have, without worrying with a lot of detail, a lot of data so that, because kids are kids too, on a certain day, they might not have been their best day, but we're using data a lot of different ways to really understand where our kids are headed.
As Craig says, the standardized test that the state requires that we give is a snapshot. And it's valuable as a snapshot, but it's not the whole photo album. And you want to be able to see all of those data points in order to get the full picture.
And I think, also our portfolios are, each student has a portfolio that is evidence of their work, and they also present twice a year at their student conferences, so they have to curate their work and really talk about what their successes have been, what their struggles have been, what their next steps are. So, when you think about all of that, you get pretty active future work.
Both my kids did that, so
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Even for our little ones, when I go to see like the pre-K 4-year-olds and the kindergartners doing this, some of their parents are just, who is this child? Like, where did they come from?
Would it ever be appropriate to find a couple of places that, I know we're small and sometimes stores can be, running on confidentiality, but could there be a couple of sorts of data points that you could bring to us those 3 times a year, just so we can see growth and, of course, just out of.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I'm not sure after COVID, but do we still have to do like a school reporting out of data like once a year? Or is that gone by the wayside?
No, it is something that we have to, we should be sharing with our families when we get that reporting, but we should be sharing with the boards and therefore with the public. And generally, we have done that. In the fall, we've usually shared. However, this year, they embargoed the state data and they wouldn't release it. So in the past, we've generally done somewhere in September or October, a presentation of data. And one of the things that we've had some conversation about is trying to have it not be the one day where we do 45 minutes of an endless series of charts at you, but that we spread it out so that we are giving a little bit of data in the fall, a little bit in the mid-year, a little bit in the coming year. So we're looking to have for you by the time we meet in July, a calendar for next year that will include some, here's when we will present and what data we'll present.
Questions? You all set, Dave, out there? Dave, oh, yeah, your hand was up. All right, he's good. All right, thank you, Craig. Good, Kathy. No, Kathy has to go.
Greg kind of took it all. I just want to say thank you to our PTG for celebrating our teachers. They provided a pizza and salad lunch, a gift in the mailbox today. There's going to be free chair massages. Breakfast is going to be catered by the eatery. It's been very nice, and we really appreciate that our PTG is celebrating our teachers because, like Lauren said, this is a hard job, and they are doing it every day. We had the Springfield Fire Department came on April 18th, and we had a great turnout from our staff, and there was fabulous discussions, and it was really quite insightful for a lot of folks on lots of questions and answers, which were really good. So they enjoyed that, and they came and they gave the civilian response to active shooter training. I missed that part. If you said that, I didn't hear it. So. And they gave the civilian response to active shooter training. Thank you. Didn't even see my lips move. And we, of course, began the state testing on the 25th, and we're pretty close to the end. We have not really had a whole lot of problems at LES. Things have been working fairly well.
Today was really, the only problem I had was, it was very, very slow. So for teachers to be able to connect to the students to approve, to start the test was very slow. But other than that, we've actually done fairly well. Knock on wood. I'm afraid that I said it out loud. And we are going to begin the MAPS testing as well. Our spring concert is going to be on May 16th at 6 o'clock in the LES gym. On May 24th at 6 o'clock, Mrs. Ryan's second graders are going to have a poetry celebration where they will be reading original poems as well as poems written by published poets. So that's really exciting. On May 22nd, our sixth graders will be at Camp Keewaydin for a week-long outdoor learning adventure. And the students always look forward to it, the adults do too. We're working on scheduling our field day. We're not totally there yet. Ted Panassi has purchased bikes and a trailer that are shared between LES and Mount Holly, and the kids are loving it. They cannot wait to get outside, ride those bikes. It's fabulous, and it's so much fun to watch. They're learning such great skills of balance and coordination and, you know, looking out for others and cars. It's really cute, actually. And I really like the little ones. I was actually hearing that most of the Mount Holly preschool 4-year-olds can ride a two-wheeler, which is amazing.
Yes, so cool.
And our sixth grade graduation will be on June 9th. I don't have times or actual things that we've solidified yet, but it will be on June 9th. Questions?
Thank you, Kathy. All right, next, curriculum reports. Who's taking this? And Emma, who's taking the lead on this?
Yes, good, I'm mistaken.
All right. Take it away, Emma.
I am. I share my screen. So I'm hoping actually some of the questions that came up, I can kind of further elaborate on. Okay, so I'm taking a different spin on our, it's interactive, wow, okay. And not interactive, but it's in motion, so that'll be interesting for us tonight. So I'm taking a different spin on, it's still going over a similar trajectory in terms of the topics that I'm going to cover, but I'm doing it with a sense of thinking about of developing the whole child to link social emotional learning, our essential skills and dispositions, and literacy in our K-6 classrooms. So where we are now, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Then what are our students learning and how our students are learning, are doing. And I'm going to really talk more about curriculum-based measures and what teachers are seeing and student work, and less about the benchmark assessment data that we were just talking about, more about the curriculum measures. And then lastly, what are we doing to make learning better? So where are we now? So I wanted to start with this quote. So people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And what you do simply proves what you believe. And I think that's true for us as a system, but also I think it's a system in your own classroom in relation to the learning targets and the intentionality of students understanding what they're doing and how it's helping them grow or not. So I'm gonna kind of get into that. So this graphic is really the whole, nurturing the whole child. So really we have literacy, we have numeracy, we have connection to place, relationships, but all these kinds of components together that we're really trying to be explicit in developing in our time in our schools to nurture and grow the whole child. So that idea of the integration of combining one thing with another so they become whole. So it's not just kind of compartmentalized into these different pieces, but all together integrating. So we have the social emotional learning, which is the process through which children, adolescents, and adults learn skills to support healthy development and relationships. The essential skills and dispositions, which describe the behaviors and qualities of mind that TRSU wants their students to develop across academic disciplines. And the academic disciplines are the field of study, so literacy, math, science, art, physical education. So getting into the social emotional piece. So about 3 years ago, Mount Holly was an early adopter of the ruler approach for social emotional learning. So the ruler approach is really grounded in these skills where you recognize, understand, label, express, and regulate emotion. And they use these 5 tools with students with a charter, a mood meter, and the meta moment and blueprint in regular use to support social emotional learning in the curriculum. So that interplays with these essential skills and dispositions of collaboration, communication, creativity, and self-direction. Those are defined, those pieces more. And here's another kind of breakdown where you can find on our website that pulls out those 4 essential skills into further definitions. So that interplays with EL education and the adoption of EL modules because the curriculum itself is designed in a way where there's an intentionality with habits of character. So this is a model that EL education has created where they're really trying to build students and learners who are effective learners, ethical people, have purpose, belonging, agency, and that to do that, you have to have a compelling curriculum, deep instruction, student engagement, and then leadership and a culture that supports that. So I actually really like that circular approach. And I'm going to go into a little bit more of how that plays out in our classrooms in TRSU. So there's this interwoven foundation that the curriculum is built on around character, mastery of knowledge, and high quality work, which is something that TRSU is also obviously with the adoption really values. So how that EL education content-based piece is interwoven into the ELA standards. And I think the other piece of this is the ELA Common Core standards. You're looking at the standard and you're thinking about how you can develop a backwards plan from that standard to create the skills and knowledge for that student to perform on that standard. And the 2 assessments, the VT CAP assessment, as well as the MAP, NWE MAP growth assessment, measure both achievement and growth towards those standards. So the EL education module components are helping to support teachers and supporting students in the development of skills. So what are students learning? And so this piece, I'm really going in and going to show you some artifacts of where we are. So this integration of, here's a picture of one of our schedules in one of the schools in the elementary schools in the district. So we're really thinking about, okay, this is where we have certain pieces of our day, but what are we doing during that time to get at certain components in our curriculum? So I want to point out this morning meeting piece, but also this module time frame. And in here, there's labs, but there's other pieces where you're really looking at PLP time. So the ruler approach. So during the morning meeting time, at least in Mount Holly, right now, because they're further along in their adoption. So this year, all 4 elementary schools, 3 of the 4 are rolling out the ruler approach. And so in the first year of implementation, you just focus on teachers. And so Mount Holly is in year 3, so they've rolled it out to students. And so there are 4, as I had said earlier, there are 5 tools that you use. And so those tools currently are being kind of supported in schools around teachers understanding and unpacking them to make meaning for students. So the ruler core routines that happen usually during a morning kind of meeting routine, they have a check-in, they use a tool called the mood meter, they reflect on their best selves. There's community circles that are really getting into developing the emotional literacy link. So talking about what kinds of emotions come up for them, and then what emotions and how they play out in order to unpack what the words mean. So there's that emotional literacy piece. These are some artifacts of the staff charters in each of the elementary schools. So they're really focused on identifying certain words that they want to feel in school, and then what actions and behaviors do they want to see as a result of that. And oftentimes you'll use that to kind of ground in staff meeting time, like, are we in tune with this or not, to model the practice that you do with students when they build their own charters. Ludlow Elementary Charter and Mount Holly's Charter. These are some rules. These over here on this side, this is actually a bulletin board in one of our schools where they're looking at, this is the mood meter, where there's 4 quadrants and there's certain emotions that are in certain quadrants. And so students think about where they can reflect on where their body is in relation to, and their energy level, so they can pinpoint, they can become aware of where their body is in context with identifying an emotion. These are charters. This one is from a 1st grade classroom, and this is a snapshot of one from a 3-4 classroom. These are some kindergarten artifacts from the ruler tools. This is a charter where the kindergartners want to feel safe, calm, happy. And this is a connection, curricular connection, but it's also linking to a EL standard where they are unpacking when they want to feel safe. And here is a piece of thinking, like an anchor chart that is helping students to think about when they want to stop and think about what they do, which is part of the meta moment tool.
Wait, I'm sorry. Can you go back to that one? I can't see the whole thing. It's about them talking about their anger.
They're unpacking like the language of emotion. So when I feel angry, this is what happens in my body, and this is what I can do to recognize. This is what rulers stand for: recognize, understand, label, express, regulate my emotion in order to. These are some models of best selves, and this is, I think, really kind of integrating into our essential skills and our personalized learning plans. So these are models of some best selves. So students are asked to reflect on when they're their best, what are the attributes that are themselves. So these are some models of students who work from there. So through that, they're reflecting on their growth through essential skills and dispositions. So this is a snapshot of a tool that is utilized in the 5-6 classrooms, where they can unpack learning targets of who am I. So the personalized learning plans have work around collaboration, communication, self-direction, creativity, and also identity. So who am I? So those are the 5 kind of learning targets that get there, that help to support them there. These are some examples of essential skills and dispositions. This is actually the LES preschool. Been in LES, it's amazing the work that Lisa Schmidt has been doing with them around just thinking about models of collaboration. So you can see some of their work there, as well as the preschoolers' words around how they collaborated in that piece. This is where they're integrating in some of the ruler pieces into the personalized learning plans. So grades 3 and 4 are talking about strategies for their emotions, and also their best self in their all about me section of their personalized learning plans. Another model of 6th grade communication, 5th grade communication, 3rd grade communication. So lots of reflecting and writing, thinking about themselves in relation to these standards. And then really getting into the next piece of the habits of character. So they're working really with an EL, thinking about how to become ethical people. So the anchor charts are supporting those habits of character, and then they're reflecting in the context of their day on the pieces of habits of character. So effective learners, initiative, collaboration, perseverance. And also in terms of reflection in developing like metacognition over time in grades 3, starting usually around grades 3, 4. They're really they're building reflection in the K2, but in the 3, 4, just in terms of development of being aware of myself and others, they start to reflect more. And so here is actually one of the module pieces where they're tracking their progress in relation to a standard. So here is a Common Core standard. This is a bunch of kind of teacher jargon here for Common Core ELA literacy, 4.1, reading literature, reading informational text, and it says what the student needs to do. And then so in terms of their why behind what they need to be doing, the teacher is supporting the student, understanding how the pieces fit together, and they're assessing themselves on that. That was a 5th grade, 5, 6 example. This is a 2nd grade example where the learning targets, I can build a model of a flower and label the parts. And so here is the agenda for that time and the daily learning targets, and that's being explicitly stated to the students so they understand how the closing assessment, they can reflect on that learning target and know kind of where they're going. Another example here of, this is actually a self-assessment for a 5, 6, and it's integrated actually into their PLP. But I wanted to show here the 2 pieces of essential skills and dispositions, the adoption of module component, and the collaboration piece of the essential skills and dispositions. So what are we doing to make learning better? This is from Teacher's Handbook. So this past month, I took 2 teams of teachers to visit the Ottauquechee School in Quechee, Vermont, who has also adopted the EL module component. And they collaborated, communicated, sat with different teachers who had been adopting to learn from them. And it was really a positive experience for them in order to understand how to deepen their practice and expand their knowledge. We also, we spoke about this briefly here about data teams in our schools, as well as in TRSU data teams. We're really using this data-wise process that was developed from Harvard to really look at data in a way to identify, to get to an action plan to take certain steps. This is just a snapshot of some of the data that we've been using, like, or what are we doing? What does the benchmark data say to support students' literacy that I've used in some of our data teams in our schools to make action plans. We're also using models like the ladder of inference in order to be aware of how, when we see something that's coming up where we fall in our emotions and in order to take action. So leading with it's no one's fault, but everyone's responsibility. What can you do? Not just as teachers, but also as a leadership team, we're really doing a similar model where we're thinking about identify prior questions, learn our set of problems in order to get at problems of practice where we're reflecting in a plan to do act cycle. We have started book clubs. We've been reading, there's about 10 of us throughout TRSU, actually, K through 12 educators, reading No. David Lieben's book, Know Better, Do Better, Teaching the Foundations So Every Child Can Read. That's been really great in terms of conversations and kind of sharing knowledge and growing our practice. And lastly, this piece of learning blocks, coaching and strategic planning with Better Lesson. We've also partnered with Ruler, so Yale Center for Social Emotional Intelligence. We developed the Ruler. Those leadership teams meet with their coaches too to support that work moving forward. And the coaching has been really, really great for teachers. These are 2 snapshots of just what the coaches through Better Lesson have been doing with our teachers in order to just further their development and support and implementation. It's been a challenge in terms of just planning and pacing and trying to figure out how all the components work together. So all those pieces together, as you can see, we're doing a lot to develop the whole child. I think that this demonstrates the how complex teaching is and how dynamic. And I always just really want to lead with, again, just thankful for all our educators and all the work that they continue to do every day to just support students. So thank you. Any questions?
Yes, thanks. That was wonderful. I appreciate that. Two questions. The first is you said Mount Holly integrated that into their curriculum. I think you said 3 years ago. What is Ludlow's adoption been?
They're in year one. This is year one. Year two, their year one is really the where you're focusing on teacher development and unpacking some of the components. And then the leadership team, implementation team rolls that out. And I'll let Kathy talk a little bit about that, what that looks like next year. But that's really like where they are in that rollout. I would have to say that Mount Holly, they was adopted in the year of COVID. So it was like 2020, yeah,
We did that first training.
2020, 2021.
Yeah.
And
We
just
started
because
the
of
training in the summer.
the fragmentation,
Yeah.
it was more like a 2-year process for teaching teachers just the different components because we didn't get through all the tools just because of that. But it.
And that second year, as we were kind of consolidating our own learning as adults, we started rolling out some of the tools to kids too. But not a full. So we're really more like 2 years ago.
Sounds an awful lot like early cognitive behavioral therapy.
Well, it was developed by the Yale Center for Social Emotional Intelligence, and Mark Brackett was the leading psychologist in it. So if you want to learn anything about it, there's certain resources on
Yep.
So I know there's been a lot of information out there about the gaps with children because of COVID for their social emotional learning. So have you seen some improvement in that area? Since you adopted it?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. The tools that are part of the ruler approach are really practical. So we're constantly using them. And so when things come up on the playground or in class or in the lunchroom, you're just using them to solve real day-to-day things that come up. And because kids are learning so much about how to think about their emotions, to see how they're feeling, and they're developing vocabulary, on that mood meter that I was talking about. There's these 4 quadrants. There's 25 specific emotions in each of the 4 quadrants. So 100 words to think about how am I feeling right now. And they're not small words.
And the curriculum is structured in a way where the words are actually broken out by grade level. So you work through the curriculum to build that emotional vocabulary through the grades.
But yeah, I would say, Judy, I can't really imagine going through this past 3 years, the intensity of the social and emotional disruption without, for both adults and children, having this in our toolbox.
And just one follow-up.
Yes.
So when you adopted it, was it because of COVID or was it just a lucky you had decided you were going to do it and then COVID happened?
You want to talk about that because you went to Texas?
Well, we had Mount Holly hired a guidance counselor,
That's right, Nicole Lewis.
and we didn't have a curriculum, a social emotional curriculum. And that previous year, I had gone to a school reform initiative conference, and their site visits are an integral part of that, where you go out and see schools. And I visited a charter school, which it was actually an early adopter of the curriculum, of the approach. And that was one of the ones that I had suggested to Craig and to our Nicole Lewis, our guidance counselor at the time. So that was like an inquiry into which was going to best fit the needs that year prior to COVID. So it was 2019.
So you
But it
just
was-
had really good time.
We were really, it was serendipitous. It felt
It is.
like, I don't know, there were all these things that happened where, not only did Gemma take that, but, different people independent of one another heard a podcast or read a scholarly article. And it was just as we were doing this evaluation of how do we best meet these social and emotional needs, this just kept rising to the top.
And then they shared it with the administrative team in that year following COVID, right, when we're looking at the support we give through trauma-informed practice, which is very abstract, and people needing something a little more concrete for what happens in the classroom. They brought that information for administrative teams, and Ruler is something that in places I worked prior to coming to Vermont, that we had made use of. It's out of in Connecticut, schools where I worked, made use of it as well. And we were able to send other teams then, which had similar reactions to it. And then we decided that that is something that we wanted all of our elementary schools to do. So we wound up with this year essentially being year one in our other schools, although there was some discussion with principals about it prior to that. So yes, very serendipitous, the right program that meshes with other things that we were doing and moves it forward so that it's actually happening in a way that teachers can use those bigger ideas in the classroom. Really great.
It is a lot of the what we refer to as the high leverage instructional practices. Like, so we now refer to the anchor charts. That's a major one. You know, elevating the level of discourse among students and faculty. Like, all of these things are so well integrated because you're using the same types of approaches. So it really becomes deeply understood for kids.
It's so much more than, of course, when we were in school and when the kids' parents were in school. So my question is whether you've been able to reach out to parents to help them understand what you're doing so they can reinforce that at home.
So
And how
in
you
the
do that.
ruler area, so the social emotional learning, there are actually components of the program so that kids will go home and talk about a word that one of the emotional words, and like anxiety is one. And so what does it feel to be anxious? And they do activities and have some dialogue about that. So they're getting connected. You know,
Have you heard back from parents?
yeah, we have really good feedback.
Last year when I was practicing practitioner, I immediately sent home, and it was a lot of actually really positive feedback from families about this is a different kind of homework that I've never seen. We had some really great conversations.
Yes.
If anything, it was like questions about share an experience when you felt anxiety or share. So it's this kind of normalizing of the whole child, and emotions are part of the human experience. So there was really positive feedback, and then students would bring in those and share, when they felt moved to those experiences. So it was really rich conversation and dialogue that was happening, which is the speaking and listening standard of sharing your perspective on things. So
A lot of hard work. I can tell.
Really rewarding. I'll just on a personal level, I feel like I've learned so much just participating.
Okay. Any other? Big Emma.
Thank you.
We could do the whole meeting on this and never get to our.
Right, I know. Hey, you guys want to keep going? Next month. There's always next month. Once we have our board retreat. Yeah. Next up, our TRSU facility director's report. Go ahead, Todd.
Hi, everybody. So I actually have quite a bit to talk about tonight. First off, we're moving forward with EEI has been in contact with one of their consultants for lighting, and we're working with Craig and Kathy to get them scheduled in Monday or Tuesday next week to start their work on their audit for lighting and how they can improve the lighting at each school. So that's a good thing. I want to speak a little bit tonight about H486. I've attended 2 or 3 meetings now with the Department of Health, the AOE, and a whole bunch of different people from the state of Vermont. before I get into it, I'll say that nobody knows what's going on with PCBs or the school facilities bill. So with that being said, H486 is what I reported to the boards, is the school facilities bill that the state is putting together, and they're going to try to put money aside because Vermont is the only state left in the nation that doesn't have a school facilities program where the state contributes money to help upgrade schools. Act 72 is the PCB testing. So in their infinite wisdom, Act 72, if there was a problem, if you had tested positive with any PCBs and needed remediation, they decided it was going to be an 80-20 split. Now they're saying that they want to attach H486 to the PCB remediation for any schools that have been tested up until now, and they'll cover 100% of it. The problem is that they put $30 million into this. The $30 million has gone into testing. So when you attend a state meeting, they say there's all kinds of money. When you attend another meeting, they say there's no money left. So nobody really knows what's going on, but we are in a good place with the TRSU as a whole, because all the schools in Chester Andover is on the schedule to be tested, that if we do have to do any remediation, that we should be 100% covered if there's any funding there. So that's good news. But in reality, nobody really knows. Lauren's been involved in some of these meetings too, and nobody knows for sure how much money there is. They do know that the earliest they'll be putting money into that facilities bill is 2025 would be the earliest. I wouldn't assume that they'll get any in by then. I think it's going to be later than that. From what I've heard, like LMH, if we went to bond and the taxpayers approved a bond, that they would grandfather that in. That could change, but they're saying now that as of now, we will be grandfathered in. So that was good news too, but that could change. They haven't even approved any funding yet. Any questions on that? Not sure I'd have any answers because they don't have any answers, but I'll try.
Before you go on to the next thing, the attorneys at Visvid have been in consultation with some law firm that is suggesting the possibility of bringing a class action suit that would include most of the SUs and school districts within the state of Vermont against possibly Monsanto or others, who are the people who created the products that give off the PCBs, in order to seek reimbursement for our costs from them, as well as looking to the state to do that. So at the moment, I'm told that the majority of school districts and SUs that have been approached about this have said, at least in a tentative way, as I have said to them in a tentative way, yes, we would like to know more about that and potentially be part of it. So there's some things moving forwards with that. Once there's something more concrete to put in front of you with you want to sign on, I'll do that. But at this point, they're exploring those as options, which is something that would make sense for all of the schools to be part of.
There's a new article that was posted today on the Vermont Digger about these bills. Yeah.
Any questions about 486 or Act 72? Good. I mean, they just they're not really sure what's going on. So have an answer from Green Mountain Unified about the bus. They've approved the sale of a bus if LMH decides to go that way. I spoke with ATG. The Mount Holly buses, the majority of the parts are in. They're going to be putting that back together. Cressy will still give you $4,000 for it. So this is kind of the best scenario. When I talked to them, $45,000 is a really good deal for Mount Holly. It's a good deal for Green Mountain. It's a little bit better deal for LMH. I mean, I think the bus is worth a little bit more than that, but they agreed to that sale price. So that's the information on that. I mean, I would suggest that that be the direction you go. You've had way too many problems with that bus, so that's where we're at with the bus.
Buy the bus without feeling the old bus.
Oh, Cressy will buy our old bus for 4,000.
If we fix it,
After we
right?
fix it.
No, we don't have to do the 9,000. The fix that we have to do is the accident
The accident.
damage.
Yeah.
The $9,000 turbo, we don't have to.
Oh,
Correct.
and insurance pay for it.
We've already paid for it.
Already.
So if I could jump in on this, we do have this other line item.
Right, I mean, we can do it now, if people want to do it now, we're talking about the bus, that's
Okay.
fine.
So we have 30,776.41 in the transportation reserve. So if we take the majority of that, so 30,500, we get 4,000 from the bus. We would have about $10,000 that we would have to deficit spend in order to do it this year. If we fix the bus, which is our other alternative, we're going to spend close to $10,000. And still may have some problems. So we wait till after July 1, which, if we're going to deficit spend, I think we should do it this year because we know we have a little bit of a surplus from the tuition. And we have $5,000 a year we're putting into the transportation reserve, which we can continue to do because, we'll have certain years, we'll have two fairly decent
Yeah.
buses, so we shouldn't have much, but it's a little investing in that's something.
I would like to make a motion to purchase.
I make a motion, we go ahead and proceed with the bus.
All right,
Can I just ask what size the bus is and could we get away with a smaller one for less money?
So the bus is a 72 passenger bus. It's identical to the one that you're using right now that's at Mount Holly that you're using from Greenmount Unified. You could get a smaller one. The price difference is not that much difference. And we always use this analogy. I mean, with a smaller bus, not much price difference. It's easy to put 54 kids in a 72 passenger bus, but it's hard to put 65 kids in a 54 passenger bus. So it's really not that much difference. The fuel mileage is not that much difference. It's no difference to maintain it. So it's actually, there's really no cost differential in it.
Rates that enrollment might go up.
What's that?
But, and then are there times when you need the whole capacity, like for field trips or for events like that?
Days, yeah.
yes, EA.
Oh, yeah. Field trips, like the Shrek musical, you don't have to go back and forth.
Did we explore price out, the contracting out option?
We have in the past, we did with this current scenario. I'm not sure that we would get a service now because they can get much service. And I did speak with them prior to purchasing, I think, the Ludlow bus because as a district to do it because of our location and they don't have a garage near that increases our price as well. They want to have a bus in the garage and everything. So it's not like we get a bus and we sit here and someone comes and drives it. We're adding additional miles because they're wanting to, I think, Springfield is the closest location. So they're doing extra mileage. And the guy said he would price it out for me, but he said the person wouldn't.
When I talked to Butler, about subbing out the work to Mount Holly, he wouldn't give us a price. He said that it was too far out of he couldn't do it. It was just too far from his home base and he wouldn't give us a price on it.
Any other discussion on the motion to purchase the bus from Green Mountain for $45,000?
And this, did we have a second?
Yes, it's Jamie seconded.
Okay.
All right, here are none. All those in favor, say aye. Raise your hand. Opposed? All right. Thank you, Green Mountain.
Yeah, thank you, Green Mountain.
I'll get that moving with Cheryl and we'll get that moved over. I'm gonna, unless we have something else that I need to address, as you can see, there's a bulldog in the background. I'm in the Bellows Falls Athletic Director's office. So We had a softball game, so I just jumped in here to get to the meeting.
Anything for Todd? Everybody good with Todd?
Thank you, Todd.
All right, thanks,
Thank you,
Todd.
Todd.
Thank you. Yep.
Financial update.
Okay. I have a couple of things for you today.
We have a deficit.
Oops. Yeah. We do have we have about a $200,000 savings in tuition, which we have talked about. The majority of that is because of the expeditionary school. We also have a few less students than what we had anticipated. Overages, Todd has talked in the past, we've had some issues with the Mount Holly furnace, and I think you'll see in the document that I posted up over under, our heating oil is over. But we knew that was gonna happen because we budgeted 250 a gallon. So that was with that. So we spent 76.6% of our budget, which is in good shape as we roll into the end of the year. I don't see anything big coming. I did report at TRSU that I was looking at about $200,000 potential overage in special ed, which our assessment will come back to Ludlow-Mount. It's generally about a third. So if there's isn't any questions on the financial, I have a little PowerPoint, not as pretty as Emma's, full of numbers that I'd like to share with you. And this is about, I've never really run a slideshow off of this, so we'll see how this goes. So this actually was put together, the base of it was put together by Brad James at the state. He is the numbers guru, man of many hats at the state. And as you may have read and heard, we've talked a little bit about that changing the funding when we go into FY25. So this is a change of how the weights are going to look. So part of the idea behind the equalizing the pupil is that the older the student, they cost more money. If they're in special ed, they cost a little bit more money. If they have poverty, they're a little bit more money. So they assign weights to each of the categories of students in order to come up with our equalized pupil. And we're currently using pre-K, elementary, secondary students in poverty, and English language learners to change the weights, and then they equalize them amongst the state by what the population is or that enrollment is, then what the enrollment is, then they do an adjustment. So we're moving from that to long-term weighted membership. So we have the average daily membership, which is what we start with our base, which is a 20-day period of time that we count the FTE of the student. So someone comes in and of those 20 days, they're only here 10, we only get a 0.5 equivalent for them. And then the long-term membership is a 2-year average that includes the state place. And so it's this year and the prior year that we do that. So we're always sort of working behind a little bit. And these are the weights. These are the new weights that are coming out. So and for preschoolers, we get a 0.46. They present it as a negative 54, same difference. Kindergarten are your kindergarten through 5, don't get any additional weight. 6 through 8, we get 0.36, and 12 through 9, 0.39. So we also have our poverty, which is our free and reduced lunch, which is a concern that I have raised because with free meals, people are not submitting applications and our free and reduced numbers are down. So what they're going to do is do a new, it's not a new form, they're going to just make it a universal form for the household income form, which is less invasive. It asks what your range of income is, how many people are in your family, and then we categorize it into 3 categories, which I think will help because right now with our title funds, we're struggling a little bit because our numbers are dropping. And you have to have, I think we decided today, 35% for your reduced rate in order to get funding through SWP and all the title grants. So this is
I'm sorry to interrupt. That new form will be for the coming year.
25. So this is not, we're still with equalized people. we'll do the long-term weighted for 25. So when we're building our budget, this is what we're gonna base it on. And the information that I'm gonna show you in a few minutes is actually what the current year would have looked like had we been this way. And then they have sparsity and population density. So they're looking at the square miles within this district, and then the population, and then dividing the two to get a percentage. Small. We do.
Yeah.
Small schools grant that's based on our enrollment, which Mount Holly is getting new people, so that's taking them up a little bit. And then our English language learners. So, and so this just talks about what each of those things are, where we get that number, how do we find that number, what are we basing it on? And something important to note is that you can have like big sparsity, but then you have a high population just because of your location, and they kind of wipe each other out. So it impacts, each individual has a different impact on every school. Your population, if your elementary is higher than high school, you know that has a different impact. So we're going to fill in this chart here as we go through the slides. So these are our weights. So we're going to take our population of whichever of the categories that we have, and we're going to multiply it. So for all of our free and reduced students, which is the POV, we get 1.3 added to the mix. So this is our count for our pre-K. You know, we have 30.03, kindergarten 5, so that adds up to the 327.82. We add our poverty, which is we have 99 students that are on free and reduced. We have 4 English language learners. And for our population, down at the bottom, you see that we have, let's see, the population is 3,557, and the total square miles is 85. And so we divide those two, so we get 4.1 population per square mile. And so then we fit into that middle category there. So if we were higher, which way? Yeah. So if we were higher, we'd get less, and if we were lower, we'd get more. And then our small schools is based on the population, and this is where the state has us picked. I cannot figure out how they got to the 68 because the number that he just gave us, he just gave us these numbers and not the background that goes to it. So that's the number I'm working on. So if we multiply those out where it has the weights on that line, those are all the weights that we're going to add to the 327.82. So our long-term ADM is 556.59, which is would be the new number that we're going to have to base our instead of equalized people. So looking at this, if we converted that 556 to what equalized people is now, we'd be 353. And what we're actually working with this year is the 329. So it's an increase for us for about 25 students, which is good.
That's very good.
Okay. So this is how it all plays out. This is our current budget. This is our current equalized pupil. And this is our cost per pupil that we are working with in this budget. This is the yield that is set by the state. And so this comes out to our tax rate before CLA. So if we take this now, and now we divide it by the 353, which is our new equalized pupil count converted, we end up with a tax rate of $1.33 before CLA. Before CLA. Okay, so we're going to keep going with that because the intent of this is to maximize, give us greater taxing capacity. So the change, so the difference between the equalized pupil, spending, the 22,204 and the 2594, times our new 353 equalized pupil is a change in the education spending of $569,000. So if we were to take that and add it to our budget and now divide it by our 353, we come back to that same tax rate. So we could have our tax rate be the same and add $569,000 to our budget.
Which is the intent from the change.
Which is the
It's not to
intent of
reduce
the
the
change.
amount that we
Right,
spend.
right.
It's to give us more, the ability to spend more and stay at the same tax rate.
Right. And so there's winners and losers in this across the state. I was just going to say, so we would be a winner. So we would be advantaged by this. And so the overall point is to put the money where it's needed. And they feel that those weights by poverty, English language learner are where that money needs to go. And so we get the weights for that, meaning we have more ability to maximize our tax. So the concern that let me not jump ahead here. It's taking a minute to move. Come on. Oh, there we go. Okay. So now if I move to what that 556, which is our long-term weighted membership, which is where we're going, then our equalized pupil number, equalized spending per pupil comes down to $14,000. So the concern is, as we were talking about the winners and the losers, is that yield is going to drop because we still need to raise a certain amount of taxes in order to cover all this. And if we divided that 14,000 by that yield of 15,479, we'd be less than $1. So we know that they need to maximize this. And so Brad James and other business managers are saying that this 9,687, not really sure where they got that, but that would be a realistic number to look at as a yield as we move forward with this. It's better to go a little bit lower and then have it come in higher and that'll drop our tax rate than it is to assume we have a high yield, low tax rate, and then it busts back up. So, but when we do that, that takes our tax rate to $1.45. So my thought would be is that in order to keep that tax at least at the $1.43 that we currently are at, is that we use the 442,274 as kind of our target of where we want to look at. Which is still an increase, as an increase, yeah. And that we're still going to have a percentage increase to our budget, but it's going to keep our tax rates.
Can I ask a dumb question that you might not have the answer to off the top of your head?
Sure.
Is that correlate in any way, or should I not be thinking in this way with inflation? So like if we took our 7,289,000 whatever, added 3% inflation, does that I lost the number. That 500,000 or 442,000?
What is 3% of that? Actually did not look at that aspect of it.
So I mean, the same question the other way. I mean, it's adding 6% to the budget.
Yeah.
Right, in rough numbers.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, over 2 years, we're gonna have to increase probably by more than 6% anyway, right? To cover all the inflation over that period.
Yeah.
So are we gonna get to do new stuff, or is it just gonna help us cover costs we're gonna have
That's
to pay
the
anyway?
the intention is for help to do new stuff, to provide some services and support.
So if our taxes increased by 285,000 this year, 442,000 is
Not a lot of
not
money.
it's not a lot of money.
Right.
No,
Feels
that
like
So we-
sounds like a lot.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's almost zero money, really. It's
And
zero
especially
real
over 2
money.
years.
Right, it's probably what you're gonna increase that in anyway.
Right. This is the intent. So I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. So Champlain Valley would theoretically should cut 60 million out of the budget. Burlington's gonna gain 60.
Burlington what?
Burlington would gain 60.
Of course they are. We know that.
But they're,
They own it.
you know, and that's part of the reason of, because I think in my next slide, one of the things they say is disadvantaged schools, which is number 3 down there, by the new weights with a higher tax rate should maintain the level of spending per student. So they're telling them not to cut. And it's not intended for districts to take this additional capacity as a tax break. They want you to use it and to put it back in your budget. So the other couple of things is we either get the merger grant or we get the small schools grant, but not both. So if we qualify for small schools in that capacity, we lose merger. But if for any time we lose merger, we get the merger back. There's a 5% cap on tax increases based on the prior year through 2019, so that we could add more money and we would only see that our tax rate's only allowed to go up 5%, which is good, but also scary because in 2019, when that's gone, we could have to, 2029, sorry, regressing. So the other thing that we need to be aware of is that if your cost per pupil increases more than 10%, you need to go before the tax review board, which is superintendents and business managers. And just to make you aware, ours went up 11.42% last year. So,
We have 2 years to, right? This goes into effect in
so when
one more year.
yeah,
correct.
so when we're working on the budget in the fall,
Mhm.
these are all things that we need to think about
Practice.
and talk about and keep in mind as we build that budget.
Yeah.
So,
Sounds great.
yeah, so this is an awareness
Excellent.
activity.
Thanks for this awareness.
Can we self-reflect?
You'll have to keep, you're gonna have to keep awareing us, making us
We'll talk
aware.
about it again. You know, the good news is we're not disadvantaged, we're advantaged in that.
All right, excellent. So far.
That helps.
So far,
Yeah.
Sounds like you'll have a busy fall.
It will be busy. Just a couple of things that I'm gonna bring back to you in June. One is, according to the merger agreement, they want a 5-year analysis before July 1, which is really poor timing in that thought process because we don't have final numbers for 23. And a lot of the merger study is really looking at when Black River closed. And so 5 years is really 25 and not 23. So I have put some stuff together that I'm working on and we will bring it to you for the agreement, but my recommendation is we look at it again in the fall of 25 after we close down that point.
And when you say they, you mean
The
people who,
did the Agency of Education in French who did the merger study.
It's in the articles.
It is in the article of agreement to do that. And Mr. French was the one, Dr. French was the one that facilitated it. And came up with the report. And so the other thing I'll bring is the tax anticipation.
All right, we got Dave. Dave's got a question. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
just
Dave.
for info, Cheryl and all, I've already had a couple of townspeople ask about that, whether it was what was gonna happen with it. So there is some local interest in it.
Yep, and we'll have it,
Next one.
we'll have it next month. I'll have to figure out a distribution we'll post on the website. I'm not quite sure how we'll do it yet, but the PowerPoint I just gave you actually is in the folder. If someone wants to take a little bit more time to look at it, and certainly call me if you have any questions. I'll try to answer them. But we'll do something similar with that presentation, Dave.
Okay, super, thank you.
That's all I got.
Any more questions or comments? Looking forward to the new taxing formula, I guess, along with everything else. All right, moving on. Thank you, Cheryl. All right, old business, we already did the bus purchase, policies. We have 2 second reads and adoption, E13 travel reimbursement and G14 class size. So we saw this for the first time. We had a month to look at it. If everybody likes it, make a motion to approve these two policies.
So
Okay, Jerry makes the
Second.
motion, Aiden seconds it. All right. Any questions on those policies? All right, there are none. All those in favor say aye, raise your hand. Opposed? All right. Thank you very much. And now we have the Mount Holly budget revote.
One more time. Just for people who signed in for this meeting, the informational meeting, just a reminder that Mount Holly on May 16th will be having a revote on the school budget. That will happen at the Mount Holly Town Hall between the hours of 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. Ludlow is not revoting. Mount Holly is, because there was a clerical error on the ballot for Mount Holly about the school budget. We have the correct number and hope that everybody will turn out to vote.
Okay. Any more comments or questions on it? All right, excellent. So we got some new business. We have TRSU limited school choice.
Right, so we have a limited school choice transfer program for elementary schools between Ludlow-Mount Holly Unified Union School District and the Green Mountain Unified School District. That school choice is allowed for, our policy says, for up to 6 students who live in either Ludlow or Mount Holly can ask to go to school. These are elementary school students, can ask to go to school in Chester, Andover, or Cavendish School. And up to 6 students who live in Chester or Cavendish or Baltimore, Andover, can ask to attend elementary school in either Ludlow or Mount Holly. When we have more people apply than we have spots for with those 6, we do a lottery. Some years we don't have enough to take all the spots. Some years we have more. Last year we had more, and we asked the board whether they would open up some additional slots, which we did. This year we had 1 available slot, and we had at the time 2 people who were applying for it. We did a lottery, put the 1 person in. We have an additional, and the family that was not pulled out of the lottery has made the request that we ask whether or not you're willing to open up the additional slot. Since that has happened, there is an additional request as well. We have a student a family whose child may be attending one of our special programs at Ludlow in the future, who lives in one of the Green Mountain schools and also has a kindergartner, and would like to have both of their students in the same school. Now, they did not apply before our April 17th deadline, but they made the request as well. So I'm here to present that to you as something that is being requested. And there's a wrinkle to our request, which is in the past, we've been able to say that it doesn't necessarily create any difficulty because we have lots of room in our classes. The particular grade level that this 1 student who didn't get into the lottery is asking for is in a class that is at 21. And so that would make it 22, which is not, I realize here in Vermont, and particularly in Ludlow and Mount Holly, that feels like a ginormous classroom. In most of the rest of the world, it's not. But I do want you to be aware that it is taking us up to 22 students.
I'm sorry, what class has 22 students?
At the moment, no. Next year.
What class would have 22 students?
This makes a difference because your child might be in it.
No,
So,
I'm just trying to,
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't, is it like this, where they're gonna have a split? 2
No,
teachers?
it is,
Like,
well, in that
22
class, there
kids
wouldn't
in
be
one
22
class?
kids because there is the class that is being split for 5, 6, there'll be 12 students in one of those sections and 12 in another. It is in the 3 folds.
Like, in one classroom,
In one
22
classroom.
kids?
Yes.
Any-
Again, that feels enormous to people here.
Oh, my son.
But it is also the case that, and because it feels large to people, we want people to be aware of it and be able to think about it. I'm sorry, I'm just pushing at if it's a concern, it's a concern, and it's a concern whether it's an individual factor.
I just didn't realize that there's going to be like one teacher to 22 students.
Again, in Vermont, that feels enormous. In the rest of the world, it's not a large place.
I understand.
But that's like also the ultimate goal is to
Yeah,
have,
like,
We
is
are.
that
I mean, that's-
necessary?
right, I mean, but it's also the ultimate goal to have our class, it's like just more student population within the class. Within the
And so
school.
you can, this is a request to add something in that we don't have to do.
Do we have to make that decision tonight?
You have to make it, you have to make it soon. If you wanted to wait until June to make it, you could. But families have to make decisions about where their kids are going to go.
This plan, 22, 23. So that's-
Well, there is,
Trust me, there's a big,
there,
sometimes.
yeah, well, and it does, it depends. And it is also the case that and to be fair to everybody, if you're not used to teaching that number of students, if you're used to teaching 15 and you feel that 18 is a large class and you are faced then with 21 or 22, it feels enormous. Part of my reaction to it is as somebody who I taught grades 6 through 8 and then taught at high school, and I had 25 to 30 kids in my class on a regular basis, myself alone in the room with nobody else. And the classes my children went to in elementary school routinely had 25 to 30 kids in it, and nobody batted an eye. You got upset when it got to 35 or 40. So it's all what you get used to. It's not, and we have made the decision here that what we're looking for is up to 18. Ideally, that's our ideal class size. So and if we were going to be talking about making a class size of 18, I wouldn't be raising. So while you can hear that I don't think 22 is all that large a class, I'm aware that people do, and it's a concern. So I want you to be thinking about it.
Like how
She would rather not have that many students in the class.
is this classroom a combined, like it's a
All
3-4?
of them will be combined next year, other than
And so it will be a combined class, so 2 grade levels, 22 children.
it's going to be 2 grade levels with 21 students.
I'm sorry, total.
Yeah.
So then it's actually not that big, if it's 2 classes, right?
There's no.
When-
well,
when-
there's
But it's the one,
there's
it's the
teacher, not
student to
it's a
teacher.
combined-
Right, there's one teacher. When we combined these two, when we combined 3 and 4 this year, we were doing that because at the time we had 6 students in one class and 7 in another. We started with 14, and then more people moved in at that grade level. So it became 17 students, right, this year?
Yes.
And then there were an additional family that moved in.
So we have 2, can I just recap so I understand you correctly? We have 2 requests. One will make one classroom that's a 3-4 classroom up to 21 students or 22.
If you added the additional one in, it would become 22.
It would become 22. And the other request is for,
Kindergarten.
okay, and one of these requests came in after the due date.
The kindergarten request, yes, came in.
Okay,
Well, I have a couple of thoughts. One, we opened it up to more kids last year, so were we already at a capacity because we opened it up? If we move back to our original number, are we still over?
So you opened it up to a couple of more kids.
Right.
So you do already have more than 6. That's
Right, so that was my first question. And my second question is, looking forward to what Cheryl just spoke about, and numbers and things I don't do. Weights and balancing checkbooks and stuff is not my fun. Those extra students could then impact that possibly in a negative way. from what I understood Cheryl say, but maybe I'm wrong.
We don't count them. You count it by
They
the
still are
home.
counted by their home.
That's why it's a
Okay.
limited choice.
Right, right,
They
okay.
get asked their, by their.
Right, so I guess that's where my question is. So we're already over our contracted number and we're asking to open it up to 2 more kids. But it doesn't affect our Act 127 stuff at this point.
And it's completely, I would feel as though I hadn't done my job if I didn't ask.
Right.
This is a request to do something that is outside of our agreement, which is that we take a certain number of students. It is not something that anybody needs to do, and it is also something that puts us above, for the one class anyway, above the number of students that this group has decided is our ideal number. These things are important to the families, so, and they want to bring their kids here, and I want you to know about that, and be able to make that decision.
And my third thought about it was the student whose sibling may in the future go to Ludlow.
Yep.
We have in the past offered sort of like the family plans. So is that correct? Where if one kid got in by the lottery, then the siblings could follow as they came?
Not necessarily,
Okay.
we have not done that.
Okay.
That is something that if there's room, we would then allow that, but no, we have
They
not
just had
done.
first choice if there was room. Okay.
Julie?
Can you talk a little bit about the origin of the original cap? Why do we limit it at 6?
I actually can't, because that happened long before I set foot in front. I don't know why 6 was the number. Do you know, Judy?
Yeah, I think, well, this is based more on high school, that you could,
This is not for high school.
right, but I think it's based on high school.
I think it came from our emulating Mill Rivers elementary choice.
And we looked at numbers and we looked at percentages and decided that, whatever it was at the time, like 3 kids could come and go and it wouldn't upset the apple cart too much and it wouldn't put us in positions like this. And we would have the ability, I know we talked about keeping families together because that's always important and allowing, that was a long time ago.
Did one of these children already get a lottery slot? Or is this just something? And then the other thing that are both of the requests after the request?
The one for the student at 3-4 came in before. There were 2 students who requested the open position, and we had 2 who had requested it. Kelly has a random wheel generator, and she generated and selected the other student. So we told this family that we would do what we had done last year and ask, and that the board might say yes, and the board might say no. After that, there was a student who, another family who said that they may be looking to do this at some point in the future, but they have a child entering kindergarten now. And since and next year anyway, they anticipate that at about a year or 2 from now, so they were hoping that their kindergarten would start in Ludlow and be getting used to all of this when their other students would be. I can't give you more details on that. But that was a request unconnected with this law.
And then, go ahead, Julie.
I guess I'd like to make a comment. It seems to me that if we every year are routinely confronting this question rather than approve ad hoc exceptions, we should take another look at the policy and the limits so that there's actually some integrity behind the policy and we're not like every single year
But
just.
it hasn't been every year. I mean, it happened last year and this year. And to the best of my knowledge, we have not had prior to that more people than we have room for. So, but you are correct.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm advocating is a systems fix rather than having to make sort of like one-off exception decisions every time this comes up.
Seems reasonable.
Yeah, we can bring it to the policy committee.
I guess,
I mean, if you make an exception this year, is it likely to be the same problem? I mean, the child will presumably want to stay in the,
Well, once somebody is admitted, then they're there.
okay.
Yeah, we
And,
can't-
I mean, can you tell from your, I mean, is it likely to be a class size problem each year? That, I mean, often lumps that start in the first grade keep going all the way up to the sixth.
I mean, it's so hard to say, and we have some additional students who come in. They don't always come in the same grades. Sometimes you have students who come in and you have 2 new students who are in grade 6 and 2 new students in grade 2. You don't always have 3 or 4 new students coming in the same.
Right, Dave, we'll do Dave. Go ahead, Dave.
Yes, well, let me see here. Since what the policy that we're supposed to be looking at is class size that we just put on the agenda, wouldn't this be an opportunity to reevaluate what our class sizes should be, especially since we're doing a lot of combinations of classes that might change what we originally thought?
So what we had originally said about class size, what we said was that we were looking, the decision was, when a teacher leaves or retires, we are not automatically hiring a new teacher unless our class sizes are between 13 and 18. So that if we have a teacher leave and our class size is 7, and we're not going to automatically hire a new teacher for that, if we could combine it with another class and wind up in a class size of 13 to 18. If we wound up having to combine that class of 7 with a class of 20, so that we wound up with a class size of 27, then we probably would hire another teacher in order to not have class sizes that big. So we're sort of setting our target as being class sizes between 13 and 18. But we didn't phrase it as we will let people go or we will hire other teachers when nobody has already left. I mean, we said it so that we had 2 teachers leave this coming year. And at the time when we looked at our class sizes, we were not looking at all of our class sizes being between 13 and 18. We hired 1 additional teacher rather than 2, so that with our combined classes, most of them were going to wind up in that 13 to 18. At the time we made the decision about hiring, we were looking at 17 kids in that combined class. And we've since had other people come in.
Well, is 13, 18 sacred?
No, you can decide you want something else.
Well, that's what I mean. If we wanted to change that, now would be a time to do it within this policy.
Well, technically, our class size policy doesn't give any exact numbers.
I know.
Right, means we'll talk about it. There's no like solid numbers in here. Yeah, go ahead, Judy.
Okay, so here's my thought. I guess I would not be amenable to having that 3rd, 4th class grow bigger because it's a combined class.
Yep.
That teacher in good faith that agreed to do it last year didn't ever think that she would have to teach 22 children. That's first. And then the second one is for the other one. It came in after the due date. And I think sometimes you have to hold on. Otherwise, you're just going to keep taking kids in and kids in. And not that we don't want them, but I think we have to think about the good of the teacher and the teacher's workload. That's my opinion. I agree.
So do we need a motion to not?
May I ask one question? Was the kindergarten also combined this year?
No, the kindergarten's not combined.
So this is.
The kindergarten class has 7, I think.
So
for the
7
kids,
kids
I mean, it
with
would
one
not.
teacher and it's not combined.
Kindergarten, we made a decision when we have conversations about this, that because of the nature of kindergarten, we're not combining classes. That's their first year of being in the big kids school. And there are lots of things to learn that and while it's possible to do a combined K-1 class, our preference is not to do that. That doesn't mean that I won't come to you at some point with numbers in the future and say maybe we should do that. But in all four of our elementary schools, all of which have combined classes, we have said the kindergarten stands. And it is true that the kindergarten class is not over. It has six. So
But on the other hand, it's a request that came after the deadline.
Right. I
it
agree with
did,
that.
although there is a unique aspect to it, because it is a desire to keep a student with the family that is going to be coming to LES because of the special.
These
It's,
are May.
it's different.
These are May.
Well, they say they are, but we won't.
Well, that's, I
Anyway,
guess
so,
my
so
point.
it's a May. It's a. I think that's a perfectly reasonable solution.
So are we gonna have to make a motion, or
No,
we just consent?
You're
that
just,
we're-
I made the request and no one is, you don't have to move to say no.
Right.
You can just not say yes.
Right. And I think that's the consensus.
In the winter, we review that contract or that, whatever we call it anyways, and we could do what Julie said,
Yeah.
is review
I'll-
what,
Yeah, we'll take a
why we originated at those numbers and if we want to alter that at this point.
And I really would be very happy if we're not going to be in a position always moving fast. Have a system by which you decide, one of which I would assume would be it's not going to create classes larger than people.
Or financial hardship.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, thank you.
All right. Moving along. All right, we have lots more policies here. The total of 6. This is the first read, everybody. So this already went through the policy committee and we pushed it along to the board. And I'm just going to read them through. F27, communicable disease, mitigation measures for students and staff. A1, school board policies, role and adoption of. C3, board meetings, public participation of board meetings. A23 is the community engagement and vision. C7 is board member education. And the 6th one is C8, board superintendent relation. So if anybody has any questions about these policies, we have a whole month to look at them. Let the policy committee know, go to the meeting, that's, I don't know when now, it got pushed off, so. Yeah, it got pushed
But
off.
we haven't received.
I was,
Adrian, for policy, Adrian Williams says she'll be sending a doodle poll around to policy
Oh.
committee members.
Right.
So they can look at setting a date somewhere around the beginning of June.
So if anybody has any questions right now about these policies,
well, I just want to make sure, I'm not finding them. I'm not saying I didn't get them, but I don't find them tonight. Can they be resent to us just to be on the safe side?
Yeah.
I could look through, but that would take time. That I don't think anybody wants, but.
right, well, did you get the packet, Kelly?
I did.
Oh, they're in the paper packet.
I don't see them on my attached online packet. But I could be looking at, I get 75
They're
emails
on the
from that.
calendar invite. So all of them on the Google Calendar invite that sent to all board members. And all of these, I'm seeing
Can you just
C3 and
re-forward that to me, Lauren, and then I'll know I'll have it? Oh, it's on the calendar. I gotcha.
Pretty standard policies. I think we talked a little bit about some of them. And these are all suggested. These are a couple of them are recommended coming in a lot, but some of them are recommended and some are required. So. I'm moving along. Does anybody has anything about those? I'm moving along. Oh, now we get the committee reports. So TRSU board report. It wasn't too bad. We just had the highlight of the night was one of the board members brought up a brand new policy they wanted us to take a look at, if I can find it. I wish I would have sent this to everybody, but thought I had it. But it was a brand new policy.
We have to do it in the policy committee.
Yeah, we pushed it along to bring to the policy committee. But it was a policy about restructuring schools and facilities within the TRSU, and I thought it was a little bit of a misunderstanding from from the board member of what happened on the Green Mountain side. So this is something to do with the Green Mountain side. And now it's morphed this way over to the Ludlow-Mount side, but it was a little miscommunication because say cooperation of school boards was one of them. Well, that's what we do. We cooperate with them. The other one's limiting decisions of one school district to another. And they don't make decisions for us. We make our own decisions. So, and then data analysis. So we pushed along to the policy committee to see if we think it's worth actually making a policy out of bringing it to the big board. So it was just a quick proposal.
The Green Mountain School District has a committee that is looking at some possibilities of restructuring the use of the buildings, since Cavendish has a very small number of students in it and Chester Andover is cramped. So they have a committee that is beginning conversations about whether we would change to having certain grades in certain buildings or possibly redistricting now that we're a K-12 district there rather than each school having its staff. And one of the things that their superintendent threw out was that there might be a possibility of students deciding to go to Ludlow and to talk to Ludlow about that. Not as something that Green Mountain could do, but as they have those conversations, perhaps they will talk with the Ludlow board about those possibilities, which if they wanted to do that, they would need to talk to the board.
Right.
So this was we should have a policy that says, what in my opinion, we already know, that each board makes its own decisions. And if somebody wanted to talk about something that involved another school board, you would have to talk to the other school board, but nobody can make decisions for them.
So that was like the highlight of the meeting. So we pushed it. It's going to go to policy committee, and policy committee will decide whether or not we're actually going to make a policy. So just to let you that that was okay by the person who introduced the policy. Put that. And that was it. That's all that I have for now. Anything, Kelly, from that meeting?
No, that
Good.
was
That was it.
pretty much it.
All right. All right. In the policy committee report, everybody saw the 6 policies we went through. So that's all that I got for that.
And you know what we're gonna be working on.
Yep, we're gonna be working on this one and then the school choice one. All right. Now the facilities committee. Hey, man, we gotta take a lead on this one.
Yeah, and Judy and Kelly jump in if I make mistakes or leave something out. So I was fortunate enough to be elected chair. We met 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Nice.
The maintenance staff from Ludlow came to the meeting, and they were, to say the least, not impressed with the engineer's report. And so it seems clear that we'll need to involve them in the process closely and give them a chance to discuss with the engineers so that some of their comments were the prices seemed outrageous. Right? And some of their other comments were that they didn't think some of the work, there was any need to do certain parts. So anyway, those are, I think, details that will have to be worked out over time. An issue we discussed was how we should be finding the community members to join our committee. And obviously we want some mix of people who have technical expertise and also people who have some influence in the towns, so that if we get them on board with whatever it is we propose, that they help. And I think we wanted to give it back to the whole board here to have recommendations about how we ought to move forward to solicit and then finally approve additional members.
So the committee never came up with a recommendation on how many extra community members that they would be looking.
I think we said 2.
Yeah.
Did we, Amber?
So,
Well, we can revisit it.
I mean, we usually send stuff out and
We
then
did,
people
sure.
send an email to Lauren or any board member says they're interested, and then we go from there. That's usually how
So
we
there'll
do
be
it.
a little article in the journal next week.
Okay.
Send call Kelly.
Okay.
But I would say too, I mean, if they're your board members or staff who want to recommend people, and encourage people to put their names in.
Right.
That would be the ideal way to go.
Right. And we can email Lauren, email Kelly, email myself, any board member, if anyone's interested in being the facilities committee. And you're looking for 2 community members?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some, if there were 3 people,
Right.
you know, who looked really good, then we say, sure, 3 is a good number. But
Okay.
we're not looking for 6.
Right. And what, were you looking for this for the next board meeting, that time frame?
I would hope so.
Right,
yeah.
okay.
Well,
Okay.
I think the hope is that the next meeting is on the 22nd, it's going to be a facilities walkthrough.
Yep.
I think we could get people on board by then, so they can be on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, right. Even if they had not been officially approved, you know, it might not, you know, but at least we have people who are interested in doing it, they can come.
Right.
Yeah, no, yeah, no, that's what
And
I'm
it's a
saying.
public meeting, so
Right.
even if they, yeah.
Right, exactly. So
2 people who would like to do it or whatever would be great.
is there any way they can put on the TRSU website saying that there's going to be a walkthrough, maybe something at Ludlow Town Hall, Holly Town Hall, I mean, just like a little saying, hey, look, this is what the walkthrough.
So they tell them about the walk.
Okay, yeah, so the plan on the walkthrough was that we start early at 5:00 in Ludlow, right? Spend an hour walking through Ludlow.
Yep.
And then we move to Mount Holly, get there about 6:15 and have an hour there. And you know, I agree that the more people who can come to that, the better. I hope the principals would at least encourage staff in your buildings who have ideas.
We can send a school message, we can send an email to all of our staff and all of our families and tell them when it is.
I think it would be good for as many board members that want to go, because this is a big undertaking.
Oh, yeah.
And that way you'll get the understanding on the ground floor, just like the committee.
Right. And then to be clear, what is the date again?
What's that?
Well,
Yeah. That's a Monday, right?
Yes.
Is that AM or PM? Yeah.
Open eye.
Get up at 5 a.m.
Really something kind of early, I was like, how early we talking?
Right.
Oh,
So,
okay, I got you.
So we
wanna do
try to
that
start
first.
an hour earlier.
okay, so May 22nd at 5:00 and you're meeting at Ludlow Elementary School.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
But we said 5:00, didn't we?
5 or 5:30.
I thought we said 5 and 6, like 5 travel and then thinking it would take an hour and probably 6:15 and up. But we want everybody to go to both buildings. We don't want splitting, like, I'm just going to Mount Holly because I'm from Mount Holly. We want people
Right.
to see both buildings.
Right, though if, I can imagine if there were teachers or, you know, they might only want to do their building.
I kind of think they should do both.
Okay.
That's my opinion. We want it to be fair and equal for both.
Right.
We don't know both sides.
Right.
I think it should, but we
agree.
obviously can't force it, so.
Yeah, right.
we should-
Highly
I'm just
recommend.
saying, highly recommend.
Right.
That's good.
Excellent.
Each of our interpretation.
Anything else?
I think that's it.
Good. Well, it sounded like you had a pretty good productive first meeting. And then look forward to the second meeting, which we'll walk through and
Well, I think I just said part of the point of the walkthrough is that the engineers focused on very technical. stuff, you know, on lights and on windows and
Mhm.
and it could be that teachers and people who work in a building, you know, have other ideas that, you know, that,
right, that the engineers wouldn't have thought of.
right.
Right.
They're more educationally oriented as opposed to technically and physically, you know, money saving or whatever.
Right, makes sense. All right. All right, any more questions or anything for the facilities committee? All right, well, thank you. May 22nd, 5:00, Ludlow Elementary School. All right, so we got policies approved at this meeting, and it was E13 travel reimbursement and G14 class size. All right, public comments. Any public comments? All right, hearing none. You. Moving along to the next meeting date and agenda. It's going to be June 14th, 6 p.m. at the Professional Development Room at Ludlow Elementary and on Zoom. And we'll have all 6 of those policies as a second read. Well, still, bus purchase will be done. We don't need to revote. So as of right now, it's just those second reads. Probably talk about board retreat again.
Should we add the 5-year analysis? So,
Oh, yes, yes,
The
yes.
agenda as an item.
Thank you. Yes, 5-year analysis. Yes.
And I'm sorry, just to be clear on our walkthrough, obviously that's not a Zoom.
Right. Well, yeah. What do you mean?
We're not gonna walk around with the camera.
Right, in person
So,
only.
it's in person only.
Okay. All right. Anything else on the agenda? I know. All right. Excellent. All right, and then our self-evaluation here. We've given and read agenda background materials prior to the meeting. Everybody do that? Yes.
Yes.
All right, we respect each other, the public and the administration. Yes, we're a very nice board. That's all I have to say.
I
We-
appreciate it.
Yeah, right. Now let's see, we handled conflict openly and constructively. Yes, we did. Thumbs up. Beautiful. We focus on the roles and responsibility of the board. I give that thumbs up. I don't think we try to micromanage.
That's right. We didn't.
Right, administration, we did not.
You did not.
All right, excellent. And let's see, we act as a team, once a decision is made, we work collaboratively throughout the decision making. And yes, we did. So that's
I
2
make a
thumbs up.
motion. I make a motion.
All right, motion to adjourn. All right, Judy seconds, any discussion? No, all's in favor? Opposed? All right. 8:21, I'm sorry. 8:21, I'm sorry. Geez, I might have read you. I'm sorry.